right. What time is it? By the time this launches, I'm guessing it's going to be 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And right now, it is 8:17? Holy shit, it's 8:17 p.m. Finally got all my stuff done. Boat's fueled up. Gears tied. Rod's ready to go. And now I'm just laying here trying to gear down. So relax. And hopefully get a good night's sleep, finally. So, I'm going to get some more of you heard. All right? The mission. The mission keeps going. I'm winning. I'm getting everyone heard. I can't believe it. Can you believe that I have been reading messages from the people around the planet for what, 6 frickin' years? Isn't that amazing? 6 years non-stop of eyewitness testimony from around the globe of something that's allegedly bullshit. Meanwhile, coincidentally, this email is titled No Bullshit. Here we go. First of all, I'm going to voice text this. Okay. I had an encounter with a buddy when we were younger. I went up looking for places with a nice view by night, late 1986, early 87. My truck was an 86. I found a place, I'm drinking some beers. Look at the lights. Fine place, engine running, music on, and heard crunch, crunch, crunch over the radio. I turned down the radio and said, what the F? So I basically backed up and got out of there. A few nights later, I told my buddy I thought a great place to see like a pie over the area. All right, you got a first typo there. Let me read that sentence one more time. So I just basically backed up and got out of there. A few nights later, I told my buddy I thought a great place to see like a pie over the area. Typo. This is up around the Mount St. Helens area where you can see Vancouver, Washington. So we got off work, grabbed some beers, and headed that way. We drove up the edge of that clear cut, went to pull in, and all of a sudden, we saw an ass end of something walking up a hill, and then to a big O, bright red eyes squat down to watch us. All right, the O is probably a little typo, but we're picking up what you're putting down. We opened up our first 24-ounce beers, turn the radio down, and watch it. Watch as the lights of the truck are on it. It wasn't more than maybe 20 to 25 yards away. Holy shit, no way. It lasted about 8 minutes. Then it stood up, turned around, and walked away. We both looked at each other and did not believe what we had just seen. So I said, okay, I don't know if that was the score on him being young and dumb and full of you know, up another hill and turned around about 100 yards away within the ass end of 2 more. Okay, so there's going to be some typos. He said flat out he did voice to text, which is a nightmare option on your phones, but we'll get through this and make sense of it. Let me read that again. Okay, I don't know if that was the second one. Him being behind young and dumb and full of up another hill and turned around about 100 yards away within the ass end of 2 more. Walking up a hill, stopped to look at that and said, no way. We continued on to the spot that I was telling him about. Now, at this point in time, we had finished our 24-ounce beers. We had to go pee. I showed him the little hill that was beside me, about 810 feet tall. I heard the crunch, crunch. We both proceeded to pee when a loud, ear-piercing, chattering scream came out. We were both glowing in the dark. We got in the truck, peeled out of there. Got out somehow with that rack in my truck. We were 6 miles down the road before either one of us zipped up our pants. Went to my place, which was 20 miles away, got my guns, and we were determined to go fix the situation. Like I said, we were young and dumb before leaving. I stopped at the top of the dip, and I had my buddy get back in the driver's seat and back the truck up and shine the eyes and shine the eyes on for me. That at that time I was 6'4". I'm 65 now. He backed off, shined the headlights on me, high beams, and stood there for a while. I had a hard time getting him to come back. I started walking towards him, and he finally drove the truck up to me. He was white as a ghost. I go, "What's up?" He said, "We proved two things. Humans do not go in the dark." I got okay. Shit, I hate voice to text. It sucks. We knew that. Good to know. What else he said? Troy, whatever the F that was, it's twice your size. So locked and loaded. Okay, I guess what happened was he must have seen it in the headlights behind his buddy and said it was twice his size. So, locked and loaded. We went back up on the hill. When we got there, the whole clear cut was covered in fog, and we looked at each other and said, F that. The next day, we told my dad about this. We went out there, and by the stump, by that one squatted down and watched us, its head was pretty much level with that stump. I stood there, and that stump was on my shoulder height. We went where he'd seen the other two, and he's seen the large prints of two in the softer. In the softer? Going up the hill. Probably meant the softer dirt going up the hill. Barefoot print. Where I park and heard the crunch crunch. We went over and looked at that, and we found a pile of dead branches that the loggers had left behind. We found a print at that time, and I have size 13 foot. I have size 13 foot. I put it in there, and it was still 2.5 to 3 inches longer than what my boot was with the bare-toed print. So the bare-toed print was 2.5 to 3 inches bigger than his size 13 boot. All right, there we go. All right, quick little note for me. Cautioning me that I was in danger or something, but I'm good, man. But I think we got the gist of it. You went up and saw these things, saw him walking away from you, squatted down by a stump. It was the same height as the stump. You went up there, the stump was shoulder height. Footprints you found in the soft dirt were 2.5, 3 inches bigger than your size 13 boot. You saw the red eyes shine, and your buddy said this thing was twice the size of you in the headlights. Gotcha. Pretty terrifying. Welcome to the club. I appreciate you sending that in to us. Now, what's this one? Hopefully this one reads smooth. Man, that voice-to-text shit. I wonder why people even do that anymore. It's proven to suck. Alberta Bigfoot. Hi, Steve. Sorry if you saw this before, but I wasn't sure which email I was supposed to use, so I sent this to a couple of your email addresses. Anyways, I found your YouTube page a little while ago while researching Bigfoot stuff. I wanted to share my experiences around my cabin in northern Alberta. I'm 53, and I've spent most of my life in the bush, hunting, trapping, camping, hiking, etc. I grew up in eastern Canada, moved out when I turned 19, spent some time in the territories, and have been living in northern Alberta for the last 25 years. Ever since I first heard of Sasquatch or Bigfoot as a kid, for some reason I never passed it off as not real. I always knew in the back of my mind there was something to it. I'm reminded of a gentleman in my small community I grew up in, who once claimed he saw a huge, hairy, upright animal on a wooded, deserted island, which is about 12 miles offshore from our town on the northeast coast of Newfoundland. There you go, you guys. 12 miles offshore from their town. A sighting. He was a level-headed, well-respected gentleman, brave, strong, proud, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, and a commercial fisherman. His experience unsettled him so that he slept in his boat in the harbor that night rather than in his cabin on the island. Yeah, no doubt. I moved to the territories in the late 1980s and later to Alberta. In 2016, I just completed a rough hunting cabin in an area that only I had been in. I never saw any other tracks or human sign in the area. Its access was rough, and I had to cut, saw, and build a trail up to a ridge in this remote area. just south of Fort McMurray. That's where those screams, those crazy-ass screams are recorded and sent to us. Just south of Fort McMurray. Like most, I've always heard stories of Bigfoot/Sasquatch, and I've never doubted its possibility or sincere stories told by people who have had strange, genuine experiences in the bush, though I never saw anything myself. But one day, as I was heading up to the cabin area on quad, I was forced to stop and cut a detour around a mud hole that had been getting deeper every time I went through it. I'd been cutting small brush for about 5 minutes, and had finished the detour when I shut off the chainsaw, and about 2 seconds later, there was a loud crash, like a huge tree had fallen about 30 yards away. The brush was too thick to see anything, but something told me it wasn't natural, and the timing seemed strange. Seeing it was the instant I shut off the saw. Seeing it was the instant I shut off the saw. I shook off the feeling, loaded up the quad, and continued up the ridge. A few months later, I completed the hunting cabin. I was doing some work outside when I noticed a log in the ground that I knew wasn't there before. It was a poplar, about 8 to 10 inches in diameter and about 12 feet long. Near one end, there was a hole in the sandy ground. It was evident that the log had to be somehow thrown, stuck in the ground, and fell over. Then my only question was, who or what could have tossed this log? As I was still contemplating this, I looked to the south of my cabin where another poplar tree was laying horizontal and suspended on the branches about 3 feet off the ground. I had felled that tree several months ago while cutting a bigger one that was by it for a log while building the cabin. On the tree there was a crude but distinct carving of what looked like a simple face with 2 eyes and a mouth. I knew it was not the tree. I knew it was not on the tree before. I saw that tree almost every day I went to the cabin. It was like someone took a huge finger, carved 2 eyes and a straight line mouth into the bark of the poplar. It gave me the creeps. And also pissed me off a little as well. It seemed almost audacious, and this was getting real. A couple weeks later, I was on the roof of the cabin doing something when I heard a strange vocalization about 50 to 75 yards away across the ridge. It reminded of the same vocalizations some have recorded on video and documentaries, like a cross between an angry Japanese sumo wrestler and a raven. LOL. It was short, just 2 or 3 seconds, only once, and I got the feeling that whatever made that sound was going away from me and maybe a little pissed. Sadly, that spring day was the last time I was at the cabin. A few days after, the famous Horse Creek wildfire passed through Fort McMurray. The whole area, including my new cabin, was decimated, including part of the town. I just thought I'd share this. I have a couple interesting theories about what Sasquatch is based on my research. Maybe I'll share these with you in another email along with some of my research and study. Thanks for your time. Have a good one and stay safe out there. Luke from Fort Mac, Alberta. Luke, I'd be interested in hearing what you've come up with for sure. Absolutely. I'd love to hear about that. And that was one hell of a crazy-ass fire season at Fort Mac, wasn't it? Unfrickin' believable, those fires that time. All right. What else do we got? This next email is titled, Hi, Steve. Thank you for helping people. Hi, Steve. Thank you for helping people. Thank you for reminding us to stop being afraid. Fear had a big impact on my life for a long time. Fear is a real beast. It must be contained or it will consume us. I believe in God and that He created us. Everything we see and don't see, even Bigfoot. Thank you for your no bullshit approach to life. I've never seen one of these beings, but one night in the woods behind my house on the outskirts of Baton Rouge, I was listening to barred owls calling back and forth up and down the canal. The owls had babies that were calling to them loud, waiting for food. This was a normal nightly occurrence. I was out there for an hour, maybe more, just taking in God's creations and the glory of it all. There were lightning bugs all around, too. They are so peaceful to me. And all of a sudden, I heard a woman yell like she just saw a roach or something. Then it got super loud, like a woman who knew she was about to be murdered. It was so loud for 4 or 5 seconds that I had to cover my ears. It hurt my ears. I felt pain, sadness, discomfort, fear, and probably many other things all at the same time. All hairs were standing like metal wires. I immediately ran inside, locked the door. I was genuinely concerned for some woman's life, and I didn't know what they have to do about it. I waited inside for a couple of minutes and went back out with my 100-pound Rottweiler. The dog just laid down and didn't do much. No barking. She's normally barking at her own shadow. I heard loud crashing in the woods going away from me, and that was it. You're a good man, and I thank you for giving crazy people a safe place to talk. Thank you, brother. Have you ever had boiled crawfish? It's crawfish season. If you're ever in the area, give me a call. I'll cook us some great food. My name is Ben. Ben, I appreciate that, man. And I was just down there near you, and we did buy a bunch of crawfish from a place in Louisiana when we drove through. I appreciate the kind email, man, the kind words, big time. That's crazy. Hurts the ears. Welcome to the club. This next email doesn't have a title on it, but here it goes. It's, hey, Steve, I'm not sure if you remember me. I was the barber at the Great Clips in the Skyway by the Starbucks in the Target in Minneapolis. I think I told my story of seeing a floating orb and being scared out of my campsite. If not, I'll be brief. I went hiking with 14 people. 7 of us spent the night. I was ultralight backpacking, so I slept next to the fire, keeping it going throughout the night. I went to go to the bathroom around 1 a.m., making my way to a tree. I froze in my tracks as I watched an orb the size of a volleyball float on the other side of this tree. When I snapped out of it, I went to step around the tree and it was gone. The next morning I told the others. No one seemed to notice anything. A few years later I went to the same spot, and this time I was by myself. No one's been in there in a while, so I took a shovel out of the old cabin to dig out the fire pit. Making my way back, something flew by my head. I heard that doesn't belong to you, or that's not yours. I froze, looked around, not noticing anything. It must have been a fly, and my mind was playing tricks on me. Later that night, maybe 11 p.m., I heard a growl outside my tent. I made noise, grabbed my gun to scare whatever it was. No tracks, no sign. Just a really bright white moon. Later, around 1 a.m., something hit the sidewall of my tent where I was sleeping. I jumped out of my tent, got the fire going. I sat next to the fire trying to focus. Do I leave or stay? I was in total flight or fight mode. I grabbed my gear and left. It took me 5 hours to get back to my car. I kept looking back to see if anything was following me. I was so exhausted that when my mother saw me, she panicked and told me if I don't call her at noon... What? I was so exhausted that when my mother saw me, she panicked and told me if I don't call her at noon, or she was going to call 911. On the drive out of the canyon, I puked. It looked like water and maybe a piece of dried pineapple or a bean. Later that month, I would get the same feeling at night, seeing a tall, shadowy figure in my doorway and a small white/humanoid arm. This happened in my room, sharing an apartment with my mother. This happened at Haunted Canyon, Arizona, Tony Cabin, Tony Ranch Spring. Sleeping in out in the backcountry will never be the same. Being out in the backcountry will never be the same. You're right. I think I even looked at and said you've seen things or been there. Or being out there. I'm back in Arizona due to the chaos that happened in Minneapolis. I've been out hunting and scouting, etc. I might start making YouTube videos again. All right, man. Those who know, know. Hope all is well. Keep making videos, Steven. There you go. Gotcha. The big orbs, the big balls of light. What are they? Why is it that we're not allowed to have all these clear answers? I wonder why that is. Don't you guys? Well, I'm picking up why, but it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. Knowing we're being lied to and misled, it just sucks ass. Let's read another one. Let's read another one here. Hi, Steve. Thank you for the great job you do to help spread the truth about Sasquatch. I live in the Adirondack Mountains near the Canadian border, and I would like to send you a short and condensed story of my experiences with Sasquatch. Each event is a long story by itself, but I'll just list them as single happenings. After we moved in our off-grid cabin that's deep in the woods, it all started with screams and whoops and yells, tree knocks and rock throwing. Later it became hitting the outside of the cabin walls and playing games to get our attention. It progressed to it peeing outside our bedroom window and standing in the driveway as they observed the cabin. Their bodies were translucent with just their eyes glowing and heads bobbing side to side. Isn't that frickin' insane? I'm going to read that sentence one more time for those that don't want to hear it. Their bodies were translucent with just their eyes glowing and heads bobbing side to side. During the summer months, I would hear tree knocks, and while looking through the woods, all I'd see was a shimmering cloud that swiftly moved away. This happened a lot. It reminded me of the creature in the movie Predator. The smells, it would be so bad and strong that you would think you had just stepped in a huge pile of crap, and then seconds later it would be gone as fast as it came. During the night, very loud two-legged walking would be heard as it came to the open bedside window and took a very long and deep sniff. The volume of the sniffs were huge and powerful. And like I said, Steve, these events each have a long story with them, but I'm sure you've heard more than you'd like to repeat. I just wanted to add my experiences to the thousands of those who have had experienced it also. Thanks again, Steve, for your dedication in helping everyone to know the truth. You've helped me tons. Be safe and be well, Hank. You know what, Hank? You be safe and you be well too, my man. I appreciate those kind words. If you ever feel like writing in a long version, you just go right ahead and I'll read every word. All right, man? And give us an update if you got one. See what you've learned along the ride since you first emailed that to us. Who's next? This next email doesn't have a title, but it starts with, Hi, Steve. Longtime follower here. Appreciate everything you're doing with the YouTube channel. I want to run something by you and possibly your audience and see if others have similar experiences. It has to do with picking up on strong energy when being out in the bush. Certain places where the earth just seems to emit some kind of power, almost like an electric field. I'll explain further with a little background. I grew up and live in northern BC. I grew up hunting and fishing from a very young age, learning from my dad. I come from a long family of guide outfitters, hunters, trappers, fishing guides, and surveyors. I spent all my free time as a youth hunting, fishing, trapping, etc. Excuse me. As soon as I was old enough and I had some experience, I started venturing north, backpack hunting for sheep, caribou, goat, and going for spring grizzly hunts. I'm 37 now, and I backpack most of the Skeena and Cowsiar Mountains and the Spatsizi. I consider myself a fairly competent woodsman and do the majority of these trips solo, other than bringing my dog. One thing I will say that goes with the theme here is that I've never felt afraid or had fear going on any of these remote trips, even alone. I'm always prepared and pretty confident in my skill and ability. However, I've found that there are a couple of places that I've been to that for whatever reason I get extremely nervous when I'm there. Hair standing up type of nervous, almost vibrating, and picking up on some kind of strong energy, along with a great feeling of unease. The first time I felt it was on a spring grizzly hunt a few years ago in the upper Kispiox River, near the canyon above the confluence of the Nangies River. At first I thought I was feeling some fear of hunting bears solo, but day after day I felt the same unease and nervous energy in a certain area, enough that it bothered me and I moved camp. The following fall I camped near the same area looking for moose. I hadn't given any thought to the experience I had the past spring. However, the first day that I hiked down towards the canyon, I started to get the same uneasy feeling, nervous, and strange type of fear, the kind that makes you want a round in the chamber and trigger finger ready. Very hard to sort it out in your head when you haven't seen or heard anything that should make you afraid, but you feel it anyways. I've gone back there a few times afterwards to sort of confirm what I felt when hunting there, and there is definitely something that, for whatever reason, makes the hair on my neck stand up. I've since explored another area, a drainage in the Kitsum-Kallam Valley, north of Terrace, BC, that gives me the same uneasy, nervous fear when I hike through it. Very hard to justify that when I've hunted solo all over northern BC and never had a care, and usually sleep like a baby when camped in the bush. These two spots, though, for whatever the reason, just plain make me afraid. The other strange thing is, I'm drawn to them at the same time, and I feel like I have a need to go explore them more. It's very odd. So that's my query, and I'm curious if you or anyone you know have ever experienced something like that, and what your thoughts are. Thanks, Tyler, Terrace, BC. Well, if we've definitely been doing the same shit, Tyler, that's for sure. And you've probably heard me by now share on here that there's places I just don't go. And you guys, maybe 2 or 3 times in the years I've been doing this, I've just up and left when I've been sitting down reading an email. I've got up and left. Time to go. And I don't know what it is. Is it something trying to contact us? I don't know, because I think when these people want you to leave, I mean, let's face it, there is a lot of cases online of people emailing us here gave us some pretty clear examples of something wanting them to leave now. Or are you going to die? But then you get those feelings like you had, feelings that I had. It's not, well, you said it scared you pretty bad. But I haven't had anybody inflict that fear or terror into my soul yet when I'm just out there by myself doing my thing. Do I want to? No, I don't want to feel like that. That would, for me, and just like you, Tyler, I mean, that's got to be the weirdest shit going. We've both hunted grizzly bears numerous times. We've both done the same shit. It would be so odd to all of a sudden feel terror, like you said, without seeing anything. Not being able to justify it. That'd be so bizarre. But there's definitely somebody's trying to get something across, and they're getting it across quite clearly, right? The big question is, who is it? And maybe they're testing you to see if you're worthy of their time. You know what I mean? Sometimes I wonder if that's a test to see if we're actually worthy of their time. If you'd ignore that feeling and sit down and listen, be quiet and polite and go, no, I'm not going anywhere. I know who's doing this. Just come out and talk. Maybe. Right? But anyway, watch the comment section below. Somebody's gonna chime in. Now, what's this? Have I read this? I don't know. I have a list here with some older dates. They're not marked as read, so here we go. Hello, Steve. My name is Russ, and I live in the northern part of Minnesota. I'd like to thank you for all that you're doing for us that had the unfortunate experiences of seeing these beings and had the shit scared out of us. I actually emailed you before about my first sighting. I believe it was back in March. Since my first encounter in 2012, I've had a couple other sightings in the same general area that I hunt. Tree knocks. Found a few tracks. Heard their moan, howl call that makes you want to shit yourself and jump out of your own skin. And heard 2 of them having what sounded like a conversation. Although it sounded like gibberish, it was definitely a conversation. The activity always seems to pick up around late September through October, and then again in December, as I'm very certain they know when rifle season is in November, and I believe they hide out in the bogs. I still get an uneasy feeling walking into my stand in the dark during bow season due to the leaves still being on the trees, and our woods are very thick, not quite as bad during rifle season. I want to email you again, let you know something that has helped me reduce my fear and possibly help others that don't want their love of the outdoors to be ruined. I've spoken to a few Ojibwe elders in my community about my encounters, and they both told me the same thing. These beings are the masters of the woods and are always aware of your presence. They can sense if you're good or bad. If they wanted to hurt you, you don't stand a chance of making out of the woods alive, even with a rifle. They are always watching. I say they because there is usually more than one. I asked them how I could get over my fear and enjoy my love of hunting. And one elder told me to learn how to say, "Hello, people of the woods. I'm your friend," in the Ojibwe language. I started doing it this season. I say it out loud as I'm walking into my stand, or after I get up into it, and the activity has seemed to reduce. I still get the occasional tree knock or branch snapping, but for the most part, they haven't scared the shit out of me like they used to. I swear they have a sense of humor and find it funny. I honestly don't know if that is what is working, or maybe they just realize that I mean no harm and I just want to hunt. Either way, I thought this may be helpful to others. Keep up the good work, and as always, be safe. You may use my name if you share this, as I don't give two shits about what other people think. I know what I've seen, heard, and smelt in the woods, and nothing will change my mind. Thanks for reading. Russell Truttle. Truttle. You know what? It'd be great if somebody could send us those words. I'd love to hear them and learn them. In a recording, actually, because you know how I am about reading in a language, names, places that I'm not familiar with. Appreciate that, man. Who's next? What's this? All right, here we go. This email is titled, "The Day Sasquatch Will Become Real to Everyone." Well, Steve, LOL, I've been constructing this email in my head for nearly a year, basically since I discovered your channel and I felt I could breathe once again. Sharing info. Yeah, that's what we were able to do here, and you've been integral to spreading the cure to the virus of liars associated with this topic. I'll first share my own personal experience, and then I'm going to tell you why I believe we're being lied to. And then I'm going to tell you what I know. Okie dokie, here we go. I was 7, and on a camping trip with an enormous group of family. There were 2 sets of grandparents with all their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So when I ended up lost, hopefully your viewers will be understanding that it was not because I was neglected, due to the fact that it was utterly chaotic, with approximately 25 kids to keep track of, and not just a single person in charge, but too many. And 36 years later, in my 40s, I can myself comprehend how easily it happened. And I'm somewhat surprised that more of us didn't disappear that week. Oh my God. My recollection is playing in the grass above the beach surrounding a tiny lake in northern Idaho. The grass began just as the rocky sand transitioned into the campground and surrounding forest, resembling a scene from a movie in which a small child becomes engrossed by a bug or a cute animal and wanders away from their group. So did I, following the flight of a group of butterflies I had scared up in a patch of clover. The next I recall is how cold it was when I had lost sight of the lost butterfly and realized I had zero clue as to which way the beach, the campground, and my family were. Immediately I began crying and running in one direction, and then another, thinking I heard the calls from my relatives searching for me. I'm going to be in so much trouble, was the constant and panicked thought in my 7-year-old mind. It was probably another 20 minutes of tearful wandering among the old-growth timber and feeling goosebumps that the real fear set in. I began to use my imagination of all the animals I'd learned about in school and envisioned beasts, from birds to bears to lions and tigers. Oh my. Eventually I found a bit of a stream trickling down a rock face, and cupping my hands I took several swallows of the icy cool liquid, each mouthful bringing awareness of just how thirsty and now hungry I was. And now, after dipping my hands into the mountain runoff, I was very cold. Looking back, the trees did not totally block out the sun, and there were small clearings from time to time where the sun broke through into a meadow. The temperature was likely in the upper 50s under the canopy of trees, so it wasn't freezing per se, but the longer the day and my disappearance lingered, the cooler it became. Finally, accepting my plight, it was now that I remembered my parents' instructions. If you ever find yourself lost in the woods, sit still and wait. We will find you. Well, I honestly did not know how long and how far I'd wandered. I found a meadow, warmed slightly by the sun, and I sat down on the ground against an old fallen log. Late enough in the day, the sunshine poking through the trees did little to warm my skinny little body, and shivering, I pulled my legs up to my chest and my t-shirt down over my legs in a feeble attempt at warmth. That's when I finally acknowledged what I'd been purposely ignoring, the sounds of someone following me for quite some time. My first thought? Stranger, danger. And yes, I felt strongly it had been a person. It was the term my mom and teacher taught regarding bad people, people who meant only to hurt children and take them from their parents. A whole new panic set in as the reality being followed turned my imagination up to full blast as though it were a radio. No. It was a simple reply, and I honestly didn't think I'd heard it. Not with my ears, anyway. It was enough to calm me almost instantly. Then I saw the bear. That's what it looked like to me. It had to be a bear, right? I didn't know of any other animals that were that large, that hairy and brown. I could go into complete detail, but honestly, it'll be the same description I've heard told from your emails over and over, and I'm sure I could not do it any better. But its face, the quote, bear's, end quote, face was something like a person, but not quite. And I burst into a fresh coat of awful tears. I was scared, hungry, tired, and now I might get eaten by a bear. The worst part was that I didn't have the strength or will to run. I just fell over in a fetal position and cried softly. My arms with their goosebumps covered my head, waiting to be eaten alive. Then these flashes went through my head, which reminded me of my dad channel surfing. Images going through my mind's eye at a speed which barely allowed me to register a single picture, but more like an overall impression. Not realizing I'd closed my eyes, I now opened them slowly and realized I'd stopped crying. And I was getting warmer. But the sun was going down, and it was getting much darker. Then another realization. The bear, which I somehow had comprehended wasn't really a bear, was sitting on the ground next to me. Though I truly cannot recall ever hearing it move from where I'd first spotted it, probably a good 200 yards away. I sat bolt upright and just stared at its face. I'm sure my eyes were bigger than milk saucers. I kind of laughed to myself as I typed this out, picturing what a sorry sight it must have been to behold. What an intro for what was possibly the creature's initial contact with humanity. "Are you going to eat me?" I asked. Yeah, I really did. It was, after all, my biggest concern at that moment. Staring into its face, I couldn't get it to make eye contact with me, but flashes again began in my head, and an impression of amusement? It was as though the bear thought me humorous, and I could have sworn the deep, although barely perceptible, grunt I detected were a chuckle. "That kind of hurts," I told it during the flashing. The flashing slowed down in my head, and as the pain stopped significantly, and then I could focus on what I saw a bit at a time, and 2 ideas or thoughts became clear to me. Family, mommy. It was a female. She had babies, and I could see them somehow in my mind. Another emotion came to me I felt was hers. Love. I never again felt any fear the rest of the time in the bear's presence. But how in the hell was this happening? I don't know even now, nearly 40 years later, and I've given it a lifetime of wonder. One word is all I can use to get my curiousness of what it was to stop meandering. Telepathy. Of course, at 7 years of age, I had no idea what the word was, or that people believed as a general rule that telepathy was a fantastical idea and an impossibility. Then again, so were bears which walked on 2 legs and kept lost kids warm in the forest while not scaring or eating the said kid. I just accepted everything I saw right then. I could see no reason to argue aloud or within my thoughts. I believed what I saw, felt, and smelled and heard. I thought I'd try scratching another itch now that I was warmer. Could I have something to eat? I asked, while she was still avoiding my eyes. More flashes. This time they terrified me. Visions of rabbits and deer and other animals of every size between being chased and killed and eaten. I must have screamed because immediately the vision ceased, and I felt concern from the she-bear. Only now did she make eye contact with me, briefly. I realized I had suddenly lost my appetite and began shivering again. Tears I hadn't realized had escaped my eyes were now drying on my cheeks. I guess bears hadn't heard of McDonald's and probably didn't keep a frozen pizza nearby for this occasion. I began warming up again, but never once did her eyes meet my own again. I yawned as I began to see sunlight once more, pressing through the trees, softly and slowly lighting the surrounding forest. I heard birds that I hadn't paid attention to probably ever in my short life as closely as I did in those moments. Butterflies. There they were again. It was as though they were dancing on the forest floor, inviting me to follow again. I couldn't have stopped myself. Looking back, they were very nearly dragging me as though I'd been intoxicated in a trance. And I cannot explain how, but they disappeared as soon as I heard my name being called from someone close by. The butterflies did not simply fly away from me. They disappeared, as though they had never existed. I also recall an aura of light surrounding them that had also ceased to exist at that moment. Only then I had realized I had slept some and had woken alone, save for those butterflies beckoning me toward rescue. I sat down right where I was and I began screaming at the top of my lungs. I screamed sounds, not words, and soon enough I heard, then saw people rushing toward me through the trees. Oddly, I recall extremely little thereafter. Sure, I remember being hugged more times during the rest of the trip than any other time in my childhood. I had a few lectures and a whole lot of questions to answer. I also learned that I'd been missing an entire 24 hours. Well, I'd believed it to have been maybe 6. Of course, perhaps that could be accounted for due to my own age and being inexperienced in recalling the passings of time. Still, I should have been a lot more hungry, dirty, tired, maybe covered in more cuts and bruises from my travels, of which I had less than a handful on my legs and didn't recall ever having to need to relieve myself even once in the woods during my entire experience. All the replies I gave got me odd looks from my family. Even my cousins looked at me as though I were an alien. And finally one of my cousins said, "You're a liar," she accused. I grew upset and I yelled at her. I wanted to hit her in the eye. The only time as a child I remember feeling violent about something towards someone. And years later in my teens, that same cousin asked me about the answers I'd given during that camping trip. It had just been the 2 of us at another cousin's birthday party. Quote, "What did you really see when you were last in the woods?" she asked, completely out of left field. I could sense that she was really asking me, "Please tell me you made it up." Like everyone else who heard my story after I was found, the questions had stopped, and I got the sense I wasn't believed by a soul. While this specific cousin was the only one who had tried to call me out, so to speak, I knew instinctively to give vague replies from then on. "Oh, I don't know what happened. I think I just found a spot to sleep after getting tired and woke up when I heard my dad and uncles calling my name." She nodded, and I felt a strange sensation as though she now didn't know just which story she bought. I got the impression maybe she had witnessed something during her lifetime and maybe just wanted to bury the experience altogether. I've never shared my experience for fear of being branded a liar. I was never a popular kid, nor was someone considered a loser. I think I avoided sharing what I had seen with anyone else strictly for their sake. Somehow I was aware people just did not want to know, and I felt guilty for considering the thought of changing their mind, therefore changing their views on the safe little world in which they had made for themselves. And that was my experience. So, why are we being lied to? These beings cannot be controlled. The human race, as we have come to accept it, seems to have very specific ideas about civilization, and if we are surrounded by creatures which could easily subjugate us, and cannot be policed, taxed, nor held responsible for the race's own comings and goings, world governments have zero clue what to do with that info. Yeah, and more. And that is terrifying to those who are very much in the know regarding Sasquatch. How is the rest of the world going to react? National park attendants would plummet and lose the money they receive to care for its forests and employees. Entire groups of careers would just disappear overnight out of fear. These are very real and understanding predictions. Look what whites have done to minorities. That was when people found ways to control other people. Yeah, not just whites. Take note, it's all around the globe. What people doing things to people, controlling, etc. It's not just white-skinned people. Not acknowledging Sasquatch means not to answer difficult or even impossible questions. The most important being, what now? So, Steve, what should be done if these creatures are exposed? How does one go about caring for a nation of people they cannot communicate with because that people are far too intelligent to contact, manipulate, and control? Are we to force ourselves onto their people, bringing disease, English, religion, just like what was done when Native Americans were discovered to inhabit land which was discovered to be valuable? COVID-19 is killing people, and if Sasquatches are exposed, could possibly, in theory, commit a type of biological genocide on its entire population. And what if the stories regarding the more magical elements of the Sasquatch are true? Multi-dimensional, telepathy, orbs, aliens. Maybe humans aren't ready to accept anything these creatures offer or stand for simply by existing. And what now? I honestly cannot decide which is better and why or why not. What I know. They exist. They do possess a type of magic and telepathy. I experienced odd passing of time and orbs. The flashes I experienced that day in my mind from the being whom I now refer to simply as Mama showed me something else. People and Sasquatches intermingling. Then only people standing where the Sasquatch had fallen. Each and every attempt to integrate these species ended in bloodshed. Not a few, not most, all attempts to introduce a species on a grave scale that a few isolated sightings reported. A few human men died, but over the centuries, Sasquatch has retreated further into the mountains after watching their kind slaughtered during false flags. Bluff Creek was just one of those moments. The truth. I can't decide what is best for all creatures. I know that a great reveal would create decades of unease amongst both our species. The unease would likely give way to a few or several more instances of warlike outcomes. Mama showed me the number one emotion her people experience with us: confusion. They don't know what to do with us either. Not yet, anyway. Not while we, as hairless humans, continue to be the only species on Earth who actively destroys its own habitat. Our biggest concern with them: do they exist, and what to do about them if they do? Their biggest concern with us: how far do we let them go destroying our planet? And I believe they will remain unacknowledged until one or both species have a satisfactory answer to their biggest question about the other species. My name? Does it matter? I'm just one among these many, but feel free to use my name if you think it really matters. Janelle Kumjian Pitts, pronounced Kumjan. Janelle Kumjan Pitts. Of course, the fact that I'm writing to you does provide myself the answer that I must believe deep down, that the truth must eventually light the way. I just don't know to what end. Most sincerely. And there you go. Another one. Appreciate the email, Janelle. Don't let it eat you up too much daily. But keep learning. Keep an open mind and keep learning. And send us what more may come about with your ride, all right? And keep us updated on what you learn. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with these people. Are they going to come and talk to us? Are they already talking to somebody? Doubtful. Are they going to talk to us? I think probably not. I wouldn't. Right? Why would they? We are doing such an extraordinary job on each other. Who would even want to just sit back and watch the shit show, right? We've got to be the crazy channel on a television if there was one. But anyway, I'm getting pretty tired. I'm babbling. I'm probably not going to make any sense pretty quick, so I better get to sleep. I'm going to set my alarm for 4 o'clock, and I'm going to get up, and I'm going to go out there and kick some frickin' fish ass. And hopefully everybody just has an absolute riot of a time. And then I'm going to come back. And I'm going to keep sharing. And I'm going to keep talking. Share my story at howtohunt.com, you guys. Get it to me. I'll share it word for word. Talk to you later.